Time is a limited resource that we all want more of. So today we're going to share the secret to make time in your life. It's not going to be a bunch of productivity hacks to get more done, finish your to-dos faster, or outsource your life. Instead, we're going to share a framework and a bunch of tactics designed to help you actually create more time in your day for the things you care about. Whether that's spending time with your family, starting a side business, learning a new language, writing a book, or anything else that's important to you. Big favor before we jump in is to give us a quick thumbs up to help others find this channel. And if you're new here and want to keep upgrading your life, money, and travel, consider subscribing.
What do you think most people are getting wrong when it comes to how they manage their time?
Managing your time is not all about productivity. In fact, we think that's sort of the wrong way to look at it entirely. Instead, managing your time is about figuring out what matters the most to you in your work, in your life, and finding a way to bring your best efforts to bear on those things that matter the most to you. So to make that happen, we have to forget about a lot of the conventional wisdom about staying on top of things, being as responsive as possible, being the best employee possible in the traditional sense. And we've created a framework for rethinking the way you spend your energy every day and modifying all of these things that sometimes become invisible in the way that we behave, the way we eat, exercise, respond to email, sleep, everything, and restructuring it around spending your energy on what is most important. So it's a 4-part framework, and it all starts with a very simple idea that we call the highlight. And the rest can be a mess. But if you get the one most important thing, it's the biggest way to transform what you're doing at work and transform your experience in your life in general.
I think that seems obvious, right? Oh, just get the one thing done. It's not the first time I've heard that. What did you guys uncover in all the research you've done that kind of makes it for a different perspective? Or how did you approach it differently?
We had a really unique opportunity to do research to back up the things that we've seen firsthand. Our weird research lab is that for the past, I don't know, what is it now? It's well over a decade. John and I have had the opportunity to work with teams in these sprints. So we run design sprints, a process I created at Google. John and I kind of perfected working with you at Google Ventures, Chris. And we get the chance to take a team for a week at a time and totally control the schedule as they're starting off their most important projects. And in that sort of lab, we can see what happens when you clear away all of the defaults of the way people normally work, normally behave at work, normally have conversations, normally manage their email and all that stuff. You clear all of that away and do it in a different way. What happens? As we did that, these lessons came out that John and I started applying to our own projects and then eventually our own lives, like our own day-to-day lives.
I remember a lot of that process doing design sprints. So I love that we broke it all down. But why do you think it matters? Why is this happening right now? Why are people not able to be productive? Has this been lasted the entirety of human existence?
I definitely think it's lasted the entirety of the digital era of human existence, and perhaps even a little bit longer than that. The thing that's really new are these sources of effectively unlimited information that we now pay attention to, right? So your email, which is, I guess, not technically infinite, but effectively infinite, and Slack and, news and social media and all these things. And we sort of fused that phenomenon with some ideas about like industrial productivity. And when we put those together, we created this situation where we feel like the best way to be productive is to get really good at responding to those things, to become really effective reaction machines instead of focusing on the things that we actually care about and the things that we actually need to spend time on and want to spend time on. And so all of the world that we've constructed around ourselves, the defaults is a word that we use a lot. And, we use it partially because we, our background is in software product design. And, when you install a new piece of software, it has defaults. But we think it's a really important word to understand, just kind of like the way things work, the status quo, sort of the normal mode of operation in the world. All these defaults, they don't encourage us to, take Jake's advice and focus on one thing each day, but they encourage us instead to react to the next thing and to say yes to every meeting and to pay attention to what's new on our screens. And so that has just made it really hard, and it continues to get worse because anybody listening to this or watching this knows that the tools that I just mentioned and the content that I just mentioned, it's only getting better and faster and more irresistible. So in some ways, these things are very old problems, very familiar human problems, but in other ways, they continue to get harder to deal with.
And Jake, we talk about productivity, and I think that so often gets lost in the world of work, right? Like, I got to get more, widgets made and, emails sent and projects built. Yeah. But when you guys wrote Make Time, was it just about work?
No, it's not just about work. And I think the thing that really it's kind of hard to divide I think a lot about the feeling at the end of the day when you look back on the day and you kind of, have a feeling of how the day went and maybe think like, what was if you're talking to your significant other at dinner or I keep this little journal where I'll write down like just things that I'm grateful for that happened during the day. Well, what are the things that happened in the day that make you feel good about the day, that make you feel like, this is a nice day? And usually it's a moment, right? It's like, it's a moment in the day. It's some kind of a highlight. And that highlight might come from work, but they also often come from just day-to-day life. The real trigger for me in kind of trying to take some of these ideas that we had been thinking about for work itself and applying them outside of work was, I remember when my kids were little, playing on the floor with them with wooden trains, and my son all of a sudden saying like, "Hey, Dad, what's going on your phone?" And he's just like genuinely wondering what interesting, fascinating thing I'm looking at on my phone, because I didn't even realize it, but was looking at my phone while we were playing. After all of my efforts to be as, on top of my work as possible and as efficient as possible, like it was like, in the Lord of the Rings, when like Bilbo Baggins reaches in his pocket to pull out the ring, like you don't even know you're doing it. The thing I realized at that moment was that this pull of like the reaction machine thing that John talked about, it's ever present in our lives. And if you take this lens of, I'm going to focus on the one most important thing, and I'm going to try to eliminate those defaults, all those pulls wherever I possibly can, wherever they don't serve me, wherever I'm serving them rather than them serving me, then the game changes in your larger life too. And in that moment, I like deleted every app on my phone that had infinite content in it. And this is like 2012. So I just like deleted like my email off of the phone. I deleted all of the, the games. I deleted Facebook and Instagram, and I deleted, I figured out how to turn off the browser. I was so angry at myself. I was just like so frustrated that I would give up this time that I knew was precious with my kids for the unknown pull of the infinite. And I haven't gone back actually. And so that like, just this kind of like feeling that the default settings that the world is asking of us are crazy, and they're pulling us away from the people we love the most. And at work, they pull us away from the projects where we can actually do the most good, where we can have the largest effect, because nobody has a better insight into what you can do that's going to be of outsized importance, and probably than you yourself. Everywhere, these forces are kind of working against us. So everywhere we can benefit from fighting back.
Before we just tell everyone to delete everything on their phone, which we might do, you talked about this infinite stuff, which kind of dovetails to these two important things: busy bandwagon, infinity pools. Let's talk about what those are and how they're probably taking away our time.
Yeah. So the busy bandwagon is where these defaults show up in culture. So the expectation that you say yes to every meeting, the expectation that you should constantly monitor your email and respond right away, the expectation that you should be busy, that being busy is a sign that you are an important and successful person in the world. So that's kind of the culture. And I think we all find ourselves either on the bandwagon or wishing we were on the bandwagon at some point in our lives. The infinity pools, that's kind of our term for the places where defaults show up in our technology and in our media and content. And we came up with this term because, when you think about email, you think about social media, even streaming, there's an infinite source of content. There's always water in the pool. You can always jump back in at any time. Those are infinity pools. And the bad news is that those are really irresistible. They're like very effectively designed and engineered and optimized to be irresistible. But the good news is that they're actually pretty easy to put up barriers around. It's pretty easy to change the defaults so that it's maybe not totally impossible to access, because I use all of those things that I just mentioned. I help design some of them. I find a lot of value in them, but it's relatively straightforward if you know a few tricks, if you know a few, we call them tactics, specific ways of creating barriers, of changing the defaults, basically to make it just harder to get sucked in, to make these things slightly less irresistible, to add some friction that then kind of frees you up and frees up your energy so that you don't have to be fighting these things and trying to stay, super focused and productive, but instead you're freed up to really effortlessly spend time on the things that matter.
We're going to go through your framework. We're going to talk about these tactics. But what's the end result of how the day feels, the week feels, life feels?
I want to share one quick thing that you will feel right away, which is bored. And I know that sounds odd. That doesn't sound very appealing, but it's actually kind of refreshing to feel that. I remember when I first adopted the distraction-free phone, which is what we call this idea of a smartphone that has all of the infinity pools removed from it. I remember just having these moments where I was like, oh, wow, like there's nothing I have to check right now. Like I'm on a walk, or I'm like waiting in line, or even better, I like just sat down to do some work, and I don't have that sense that like I have to check something. That pull is gone. And at first it's sort of alarming. You're like, whoa, like that's weird. And then you're like, oh, wait a second, I can just pay attention to the things that I actually care about. So that's sort of the immediate feeling. But Jake, maybe you could talk about sort of how it feels over time, because I mean, you're far more diligent about this than I am. And I mean, you've had a truly distraction-free phone for like 12 years now or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, I backslide occasionally. I'll have something on there, take a trip and put email on there, and then I'll take it off, because it's true that once you get used to this feeling of not having the pull, it's like there's been a rope around your neck that's gone. It's a feeling of freedom, and it does manifest first. I think first it's stressful. It's like stressful to think like, what am I missing? And I guess I'm old enough to remember what it was like before we had smartphones. And so I do have this pretty solid, like bedrock knowledge that you can survive, like you can be an effective person without having access to your email or Slack or the internet or whatever, like at any moment of the day. That feeling at first is stressful. And then maybe the next feeling is boredom. Boredom, another manifestation of boredom is that time slows down, and that you feel like you actually get more lifetime because your time is going a little bit slower. When I'm in the mode, when I have everything on my phone, and sometimes I have to turn it on for a trip, right? Like I said, for whatever reason, or I try out some app and then I realize, oh my God, this is an infinity pool. And at those times, I feel like I'm just constantly on. My brain has no rest, and time just starts to blur by. It starts to go by faster. And our experience of time is it's not fixed. Sometimes it goes really, really fast, and sometimes it slows down. And I found that it slows down in a really good way when the defaults are, when we create barriers.
Just so anyone listening, who hasn't read the book yet knows, this isn't a book of distraction-free phone. There are a lot of tactics. So if someone's listening and thinks, wow, that one is not where I want to start, we're going to get through a lot of options. You don't have to get rid of every app on your phone. It's just one of the tactics. So maybe the best thing to do now is just start and kind of walk people through what are the kind of high-level framework, how people can start to make time.
Make time is this framework that Jake and I created, and it's comprised of 4 different categories or 4 steps. The first is highlight, which we talked about. It's this idea that you should identify the single most important thing that you want to spend time on each day and then focus on it. The second step is laser. And this is really about setting up these barriers to distraction, changing the defaults around the technology that you use so that you can maintain laser-like focus on your highlight, on that one thing you've identified. The third part is energize. And this is sort of a recognition that none of the first 2 steps aren't really going to work if we don't take care of ourselves, our brains and our bodies, our mental health and our physical health. And so that's really, the advice in Energize is all about simple ways to reset some of the more physical defaults in our world so that we can have more energy, so that we can pay better attention. We can, make really good use of that time in those moments. And then the final part of Make Time, the final step, is to reflect. And we take an experimental approach to this stuff and really in a lot of things. I mean, we both have worked in the technology industry for a long time, and we work with a lot of startups, and we're always encouraging those teams to, run experiments to sort of create tiny loops of feedback, from their product to their customers and back. And we think that's really important in our own lives, our own days. And so the final step of Make Time is really to pay attention to what's working and what's not working, and say, oh, I tried removing everything from my phone, but it was too much, or I actually felt that I wasn't able to get this important thing done, or I ended up just reinstalling everything. That didn't work. So maybe I'm going to try something else. Maybe I'm going to pick a different tactic out of the book. But I think, even if you're not trying a ton of different stuff, simply paying attention, treating your time and your life as an experiment, a series of experiments, just like you might do at work, is really important. And it's the thing that kind of completes the loop and just makes it all click together much more effectively.
This framework comes from when we were running these design sprints, and we still are. So we've run hundreds of these now with companies, and we sort of saw that this notion of having a highlight that we focused on each day, one most important thing that we brought our peak energy to, that we were sure there was time and attention for, that having laser focus during that time, clearing away all distractions, was super important. And that the energy of the team was important, that we needed to carefully monitor when are people having snacks, when are we taking a stretch break, what are the kind of max hours we can work where we're still in the optimal mode, and reflecting and looking back and finding ways to improve it. When we started applying these ourselves to our own lives, when John and I started saying, hey, the stuff that we've learned here with these hundreds of startups, let's apply it for ourselves, we found that there are some things that work for me that don't work for John, some things that work for John that don't work for me. So we don't think of it as this one size fits all recipe. It's just the framework is kind of undeniably true, we think. And the way you apply that framework, it's gonna depend. It's gonna depend on what floats your boat.
But no matter who you are, it sounds like everybody should start the day with a highlight.
That has certainly turned out to be the thing from this book that people have unanimously said, wow, that is transformative. And, of course, we'd love to have people buy the book, read the book, or listen to the book on Audible or whatever. But if you just start making a practice of every day in the evening or in the morning, identifying a highlight for the next day, and we can talk more about how to do that, how we think about doing that so it works best. And then reflecting back at the end of the day and saying, was I able to make time for my highlight? Incredibly powerful shift in the way you get things done at work, pay attention to what you care about in your life, unlock projects that you thought you couldn't get to, and slow down your life in a really, we think, transformative way.
And having one highlight doesn't mean you only do one thing a day, right?
So the one highlight is the single thing that you want to bring your best energy to, your best focus to. And we tend to find that there's a couple different categories that those highlights fit into. So sometimes it's urgency. Sometimes it's a project that, really needs to get done. It's important, and you want to give it its proper due its proper respect and make it happen. Sometimes it's satisfaction. It's a project like Jake mentioned where, maybe it's not going to happen otherwise. And it's going to feel really good to have finally spent time on that thing. And sometimes it's just based in joy, right? Sometimes it's just something that is going to be fun for you. It's going to be, kind of restorative. It's going to, help you spend time with yourself, with your family, with your friends. But, we kind of think of it as this like 60 to 90 minute sort of block in the day. And then the rest of your day is, everything else. Right. And so, when I look at my days, most days I have a focus block in the morning, and then my meetings are after lunch. And then I have an admin block at the end of the day to get through, email and things like that. It might not sound that, earth shattering to say, oh, I'm going to spend 60 to 90 minutes on something, but it's an amount of time that if you truly use it to focus on one thing, actually is pretty huge. It's a level of focus that I think most people don't have in their day-to-day lives. And once you get in the habit of doing that, a lot of the other things start to fall into place. You get this clarity about what really matters and what can take the back seat. And so it's not about, doing only that one thing, but really making sure that you identify and then make time for that one most important thing each day.
I have two questions. So one, yesterday I had these two things that were going to happen. So one, I needed to finish this part of the website I was building. And I was like, that in my mind, that was like the urgency highlight. But then my wife and we both took one of our kids, and instead of going out to dinner as a family, I took our youngest daughter out on a date. My wife took our oldest daughter out on a date. And then we didn't plan on this, but we ended up meeting for dessert after. Like, were both of those the highlight? Can I have two? How do I think about like two very different and competing things?
The way that I think about it is the highlight is the thing that wouldn't otherwise get your time or wouldn't otherwise get your energy. And that varies day to day and week to week and month. Even as you go through different, eras in your life, different seasons, you might find you need to, your highlight needs to be something different. And so, I can't answer your question without like being inside your head, but like, it sounds like the urgent thing during the day was like the thing that, it could have easily gotten away from you. It could have easily been like, oh, I'm doing all this other stuff. And like, I never get to that one thing. But, on the other hand, maybe you've been meaning to, kind of take your kids out and, to dinner in these, in this way for a while, but you had never quite got around to it. And so then maybe that's what you needed. But I think it's part of what's helpful about this daily cycle of reflecting and paying attention is you can ask yourself, like, what do I need now? Like, what do I need my highlight to be? And what's going to take care of itself? What's going to happen anyway, either because it's scheduled or because I have a routine for it or a habit for it. And that's a little bit outside of this idea of the really intentional focus with the highlight.
And it can change throughout the day, right?
Yeah, it can. It absolutely can. Well, I have a different one from yesterday. So for yesterday, for example, we've just finished the manuscript for our book, and I'm really excited to send it to some of our test readers. And that was going to be my highlight. It's like, I cannot wait to do that. And then as it happened, because I've been in like a bit of crunch mode getting this thing done, I was like, wait a second, I can hang out with my younger son and do some projects with him around the farm here. And that ended up being what I did during that time slot when I pictured I was going to send out the manuscript. Because the reality was, I realized in the moment, I was like, will it really kill me if I send those out tomorrow instead of today? It's like, no, it won't. But this is a really special opportunity. I'm going to switch my highlight. This is where I want to put that peak energy. This is the one thing I want to make sure I give my strongest attention to. And it was worth it. It was absolutely worth it. It was a special opportunity, right? And the thing that, looking back on the day, I was like, I can remember that. So the notion that your highlight has to be set in stone once you pick it, sometimes you're going to change your mind during the day. Sometimes an opportunity is going to come up, and that's going to be the right thing to do, or you're going to realize it. But as John says, it's just this practice of day in and day out thinking about what's most important. Where do I want to make sure if if nothing else happens, I bring my peak energy to it. I bring my best focus to it, this thing that I'm going to enjoy. And that's for us really the power of the highlight.
One other nice thing about the highlight is that even when you switch your highlight, when, like Jake said, you were planning to do this thing, but you ended up doing something else. If you've created this habit of choosing a highlight and making time for it each day, it's like you have some slack in your schedule, right? If you were booked back to back from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and a cool opportunity came up to hang out with your son or a friend or whatever, there's no slack, right? There's no room for that thing to happen. You have to go and cancel stuff but it's a bunch of extra work to email people and rearrange it or whatever. But when you've sort of built your day around one block, it becomes a little easier to move things in or out of that block depending on what you need in that particular day.
Now, we talked earlier, the book's filled with tactics. So maybe let's highlight a few highlight tactics and kind of flag some of the things people might want to do to really make this work well.
I'll start with a tactic that's actually not in the book. It's based on a tactic in the book. So I'll tell you the one it's based on, and I'll tell you what I actually do. So there's a tactic in the book called Design Your Day. And it is sort of what it sounds like. It's, the idea is to use your calendar not as kind of this like list of things you have to do or this list of things that somebody else dictated for you, but think of it as a canvas. Think of it as your planner for the day where you can sort of draw out, you can design out your day, how you want to spend time, what's important to you. I realized a couple of years ago that most days I kind of want the same things. I need the same things, and that I could create a calendar template. So this is a really important tactic for me, is that I have basically I have a template for my time for the week. And there's certain parts of the week that are for focus work, certain parts of the week that are for meetings, parts of the week that are for admin work, sort of shallow work. And that basically repeats every week. And it's just this like scaffolding that I can kind of build on. And then the extra cool thing is that there's this company called Reclaim that we invested in at Character, which is our VC firm. But initially I was just a user of the product that sort of manages that template for you. So you kind of define, these are the habits that I have. These are the things that I need to do and approximately when I want to do them and how much time they're going to take. And then your calendar sort of gets adjusted around those things. Reclaim sort of adjusts your calendar around, if a meeting pops up here, we'll move lunch forward by 30 minutes to make room for that, things like that. And so that's been probably one of my most important and durable tactics, is this idea of a calendar template to make sure that sort of week in and week out, I'm sort of big picture, spending time on the things that matter rather than kind of getting sucked back into, the busy bandwagon of just filling more and more of each subsequent day with meetings and email and things like that.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, because that's a very powerful tool and a very powerful way to take control of your time over, not just a day, but you can extend it to weeks and months, and it can become the template for how you work. And I've learned from John and apply that to my own calendar. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, a sticky note is an incredible tool for setting your highlight. So you start out the day, say, okay, what's the thing that's going to be the most urgent or the most important, bring the most satisfaction or joy, whatever it might be to me. And you take your best guess at what that's going to be. You write it down on a sticky note and you stick it on a visible place on your phone. You stick it on your computer display. You stick it, on your laptop or whatever, wherever you're going to be. You stick it somewhere where you can see it. Stick it in the kitchen, stick it on the dashboard of your car. And then you just see that thing and you're like, right. That's the thing I want to make sure I bring my peak energy to. And then at the end of the day, you look back and you see if you did it. I think that practice simply of identifying it and writing it down somewhere that I can see it is really powerful for me, because I don't think I'm alone in this. I think I can do more in a day than I can. I always think I'm going to do this and this and this, and there's like 10 things I'm going to do today. And I vastly overestimate what I'll be able to get done. And as a result, I'm constantly, if I don't have rails to protect myself, I'm constantly kicking myself for what I did not do. I'm constantly feeling like I did not measure up to the standards that I set, because the to-do list was so long, the inbox was so long, and I thought I'd be able to get through all of these things. The highlight is a really powerful way to steer me back, and just writing it down. It's like, okay, look, realistically, pal, your previous self from like 10,000 previous days says you're probably only going to get one thing done if you're lucky that's on your list, and really do it well. So you do that. Maybe you get lucky today, you get 3 or 4 things done, but just seeing that one thing, it's a powerful thing to help me reset my own expectations.
I'll add a couple more highlight tactics that I think are helpful and that I use a lot. One is called batch the little stuff. And I bring it up partially because it's really important, but partially because I know that we're at the point in the conversation where most people listening are like, yeah, that sounds nice, but like, I got a lot of stuff to do. Like, when do I do all the stuff? My day is made up of like 15 little things I have to do, not like one big thing that I need to do. And so whenever possible, I try to batch the little stuff together. So rather than like an email here, jump back to that blog post I'm trying to write. Another email came in. Okay, back to the blog post. Multitasking doesn't really work. We're not really capable of multitasking. Instead of doing that, I will save all those little things, all those emails for a chunk of time. And I mentioned earlier this idea of an admin block. And the cool thing about it is that not only are you not feeling like you're pulled back and forth between things, you're able to focus, but you actually get better at doing that thing, right? Like if you spend an hour going through your email, you're better at email, you're more efficient at email than if you try to do one email every 5 minutes throughout the entire day. So that's, I think, an important one and just a practical one that I would encourage people to keep in mind. Batch the little stuff. And
how do you keep track of that little stuff?
Well, a lot of it has its own inbox. It lives in a place. And so I think a lot of productivity experts, so-called, would say, don't use your inbox as a to-do list. But I do. My inbox is my to-do list for all the little stuff. So it's like, if there's a notification from, something in Notion, we use Notion internally at Character for kind of our OS for the team. If there's a notification, it'll be in my inbox. There's something I need to follow up on, it's in my inbox. I send myself a lot of email. I have an app that it's called Compose, and all it does is it opens the Compose sheet on iOS, so I can send myself an email without looking at my inbox. And so then at the end of the day, when I get to that admin block, I open my inbox and I just kind of work through those things. Anything that isn't a little thing, that's a big thing, then it has to go on my calendar. A big thing, needs to have some time dedicated to it. Or I need to decide that I'm not doing it right now, that it's going to get deferred until later.
And the last thing before we move on is, what about days where you just don't get the highlight done? Can you do it the next day?
Absolutely. Yeah. You can just try again the next day. I mean, certainly that happens to me all the time. And the part of the notion with this too is that you'll see each day as it's an experiment. Now, these are the combination of tactics I tried today. And if it didn't work today, maybe I picked the wrong highlight, wasn't accurately what was most important. Or maybe the system just broke down. But again, I think maybe this is like oversharing or it's about me, but personally, I'll default to kind of kicking myself if I don't do things right. But this notion of like, it's one day at a time, let's look and reflect on what happened today and then figure out like, okay, there was probably some thing that was working against me. There's all these powerful forces, these social pressures, and all this software that's working against me all the time. What's a way I can battle it differently tomorrow? And maybe I'll try this highlight again. Or maybe like that highlight was just bigger than I thought it was, and there's more to it. And so I'm going to do it again. Or maybe I'm going to do it again because I did it and it was great. And like I can go back to that well. Like any of those things are fine.
And this all plays into feedback loops, right? Like you could process what you did. How quick are those feedback loops? Are you trying to get that feedback daily, weekly, monthly? Do you visit them in different ways? Or do we punt on that and come back to it?
We think daily is the right level of focus. We think that looking at this day by day is zoomed in enough that you can do something about it. If you, like Jake said, if you didn't get to your highlight or you didn't complete it and you want to try it again tomorrow, or you want to try something different tomorrow, you can do something about it. It's actionable. But it's also zoomed out enough that you are, able to think a little bit more holistically, sort of bigger picture about how you're spending your days, which is how you're spending your life. So we recommend that people, when they're just getting started with this reflection step, that they do it daily. We think that's kind of the sweet spot.
So we've got our highlight. We know what we want to focus on. We picked it the night before, the morning of. I'm really excited to talk about how we get laser focused because I've seen it myself, right? I know that when I hit that moment, I can get done things in an hour that otherwise I'm like, wow, I've tried to work on this 10 times over multiple days. And then I just found that spot. What are some of the best ways to find that focus?
One way that we think about this is there's the first half of finding that focus is identifying what you want to focus on. And then if you're trying to point a laser at that target, the next question is, how do you get the disco ball of distraction out of the way so that the laser can hit the target? John and I, and you too, Chris, you've built products for years and years. And we all know that there's a lot of effort always being put into making things simpler for us, taking steps away from things, right? So whether that's, one-click buy on Amazon or AI results on search instead of having to dig through web pages, whatever it is, people are always trying to take a step away so you can get to the thing faster. That's a big business. There's a lot of economic incentive for people to take steps away and make it easier for us to do other things. Doing projects that we care about, there usually are extra steps. We usually have to spend some extra time to get there. So one of the first things we do is to try to build steps to get to the distractions, try to add some steps back in so that the disco ball is pushed out to the side. And similarly to how we might, I take apps off of my phone that I think are going to distract me. You can do the same thing on your computer. So you can use, there's an app called Freedom that'll either block a specific list of websites or block the internet altogether for a period of time. So you can say, I want freedom for, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, the whole day, whatever, and it'll shut down access to those things. You can go so far as to put like a vacation timer on your router so that you just turn off the Wi-Fi. Then there are also things you can do to reset the expectations other people have of how fast you're going to respond to messages, email, and the like.
The reset expectations one, I think I don't want to say favorite because there were a lot of good things, but the idea of setting up an autoresponder that's like, I've broken up my day or, this is how I focus. I might not get back to you. If it's urgent, you can text me. You probably have a better template for that. But that just was really interesting because I think the fear we all have is, well, if I don't check my email, but once a day, what if there's something important? And the answer, one way is to say, get over it. Nothing's that important. The other way is to like create another avenue and set up a barrier if it really is that important.
We have a friend that we work with, a business partner named Connor Swenson, who has taken Make Time and he teaches it to teams. He works with big companies and sort of helps them figure out how to implement this stuff inside their companies. And one of the things that he does with those teams is he walks them through what their minimum viable frequency is of checking email. And it's an interesting exercise, and you can do it for yourself. You can kind of think about, in my work, in my life, like, how long could I go without checking email, without anything really bad happening? Like, and you can define bad however you want. Like if you're in a customer facing role, you're in sales or something like that. Maybe it's a little bit shorter than it is if you are a writer or a product designer or something like that. But when you ask people that question, the answer is almost always more than an hour, right? Like it's really hard to find somebody who would say, oh, if I don't check my email every hour, I'm screwed. Like I'm going to get fired from my job. Like it's going to be horrible. Yet even that alone is like, and sort of an easy change that you can make is to just like reduce the frequency of when you check your email. And And this idea then of having sort of this cascade of like, well, I can't respond right now, but if you really need me to respond in the next 4 minutes, like contact me this other way. That just adds a little bit of extra friction. It enables you to push that frequency of when you check something, maybe even longer, maybe to 4 hours, maybe to a whole day, something like that.
Yeah, Jake, you've gone the distraction-free phone route for a while. You've removed the apps, you've gotten rid of everything. There is an alternative for people who aren't ready for that, which is, well, you could keep the apps on your phone, but log out of them so it's harder to get in, or take them off your home screen, or turn off the notifications. And I am guessing what you do is you just use them on your computer, or maybe you have another iPad that you use them on, but you're not saying don't do all these things. You're saying make it harder or make yourself have to do them somewhere else.
Yeah, it's really nice if you can confine them to a spot. And, I think that sometimes you may find, and I have found that when I create separation from those things, when I stop getting this sort of constant feedback loop with, this happened for me with social media, like with Facebook, with Instagram, whatever. Like when I stopped having the constant feedback loop with it, it started to feel a lot less necessary. And I realized it was more pleasant for me when I was in those times when I was away from it than when I was at my computer and could access it. And so I just gave up altogether. But for other things, it really is just about creating that bit of space. And that space can be device related. It could be geographic, like, I can do this stuff in my office because that's where my sort of desktop computer sits or whatever. It can also be a temporal space, like this is the time block when I use this stuff and this is the time when I don't. And again, that freedom app can be really helpful. You can have scheduled blocks. You can say, I always want these things or everything to turn off at this time and turn back on again at this time. And that's, it's not about necessarily giving everything up. And I don't think it's realistic for most of us. And for all of us, there's probably things that we don't want to give up. But it's really just about changing the relationship and not feeling like we aren't going to get our money's worth out of our phone, or we're going to miss out if we're not on top of things 100% of the time.
When we wrote Make Time, I don't recall two-factor authentication being like a big deal. And maybe it was, but I don't remember it. But now it is like you can set up two-factor auth on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on things that are not sort of like mission critical applications. And that's actually another great way to add friction. That's something I started doing in the last couple of years, is turning on two-factor, even for stuff that I don't care about. So in addition to logging out or enabling something like freedom, that's another really simple tactic that you can use. That's not in the book, but I use a ton and really helps.
And all these things are reversible. Now, one tactic that I use, and I can't tell if it's a stalling tactic or a good tactic, but I find personally that sensation of like things aren't in order, I haven't checked my inbox, my desk is a mess. When I can get rid of those things, I feel more capable of just diving in. Now, on the flip side, there's some advice, even a tactic in the book that's like, don't check all your email in the morning, use the morning for productive time, which I think for me would have me the entire time I'm trying to be productive being like, I still don't know if these things need to be resolved. Whereas if I wake up and sometime in the morning, I go through, make sure there's nothing urgent. I clean off my desk and I'm like, now I'm going to focus. Am I kidding myself or is it different for everyone?
I think one thing that we have learned is that it is different for everyone. So I never want to say like, Chris, you're wrong. Like you're deluding yourself. I mean, you probably are, but the reality of it is that there's this discomfort that I think we kind of have to get used to, because the prevailing culture and the prevailing expectation is that we're going to be on top of things. And so not being on top of things, and by on top of things, I mean, I've gone through my email, I've responded to everything that I feel like I either have to or sort of socially obligated to in some way. I've checked I've checked Slack, I've checked everything. I'm sort of up to speed. I've checked the news. Like there is a feeling of I've checked everything and done all that work. And now the decks are clear and now I can truly focus. And I won't lie to you, there is a feeling of psychological freedom that happens when you feel like everything is taken care of. The cost, however, of achieving that level of psychological freedom for most of us is the cost of investing more deeply in these bigger things that are harder to make time for. And that cost comes both from the time that you spend catching up and clearing the decks, and also from the attention residue. I've been working in my email, I've been reading the news or whatever, and now I feel like I'm caught up, but that stuff is still with me. It's still in my head in some way. And this idea of attention residue, it comes from this study by Dr. Sophie Leroy from the University of Washington. I think we first heard about it from Cal Newport, and it's a fascinating idea. Just these things just stick with us and make it harder for us to be fully all in on another topic. I think it helps to start off with an activity we call stack rank your life. So you just like make a list of every single project, work project, life project that you currently have going on, and also the ones that you'd like to do but do not have time for. And then in whatever order, write that list out and then put them in order. Like what's the, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you had a magic wand and had as much time as possible, where would you want to be spending it? And then just like circle the top one and figure out like, well, how do I make time for that most important thing? And if you look at that list and there is no deviation from the way your life actually is and the way your days actually are, then it doesn't matter. And whatever you like, you don't have to get comfortable with the discomfort or any of that. Like you can just keep doing things as they are. We sort of think like you want to apply more and more tactics if you feel like that list is more out of whack with what's actually happening. And if you feel like there is an important thing and I'm not getting to it, then you have to maybe get into this zone of getting comfortable with the discomfort, because that feeling of I can't start working yet because there's this pile of stuff and I need to clear the decks. You can get comfortable with that feeling of the decks being messy and get into the zone anyway. It's just one of those things. It's like that saying, like, if you, the more time you spend outside your comfort zone, the bigger your comfort zone gets. And you can get comfortable with the mess of the stuff that doesn't really matter so that you can focus on what's most important, but it'll take a few reps.
I think if you want to make a habit of clearing the decks work, then it's really important to constrain it along two dimensions. One is time and the other is channels. So like it has to truly be time bound, because one of the big challenges with clearing the decks is that the amount of stuff that is on your deck will always increase, right? There will always be something else to look at or to take care of. And then constraining it along the line of channels allows you to say, okay, I'm not going to read the news in the morning. Like the news actually isn't like, that's not actually going to change what I do during the day, but maybe email is important. Maybe Slack is important. And I do this. I have in one of the habits that reclaims schedules for me every morning is called pre-check. And it's 30 minutes only and it's email only. And I do this because I have decided that in my job, my minimum viable frequency for email is about 4 hours. So like I can't go from like the end of the day until like the next day lunch. That would be too long for me to go. If there's, an email from a founder that we're sort of working with or trying to invest in, there's an email from a potential LP in our fund, who's expecting us to follow up. So I've kind of hacked that and accounted for that by having this pre-check block, but it's very, very tightly constrained. It's only 30 minutes and it's only email.
Yeah. Another thing that's worked well for me, which was hard to get comfortable with, is you make this list that you said, Jake, or you put down all the things that are important. And I feel like you have to be really ruthless about the projects that you haven't made time for, about whether you actually want to do them. And so if you look at my macro to-do list, which is just like project level, I'm like, if something's been on there for 3 months and I haven't done it, sometimes the answer isn't make time for it. Sometimes the answer is like, let's just cut bait. Like, this is not a project that I clearly prioritize. This is not an email that I actually want to respond to. And let's just not do it. And that is become harder and harder to get comfortable with. But once you get comfortable with it, it's really freeing. And, I know a friend of ours that we both all worked with, Kevin Rose, he was really good a few times at like, I got all these emails. I don't really want to respond to them. Command A, archive all. Like, I'm not suggesting people go to that extreme all the time, but when there's a project that you have been pushing off, if it's an option to not do it, that is a potentially viable option.
Yeah. And maybe it's counterintuitive, but adopting some of these tactics of saying, I am going to identify a highlight each day. I am going to focus on one thing at a time. I am going to make a list of what's important to me. That actually makes it easier to decide when something isn't going to happen, because you've created a system for yourself. Like, this is my system for what I spend time on. And if there's something that clearly doesn't fit the system, it's uncomfortable for sure, but I find it easier to say, okay, it doesn't fit. It hasn't fit for 3 months. It hasn't fit for a year. It's not going to happen. Instead of, I think, if you operate in sort of the conventional productivity paradigm of like, well, if I just get organized enough, I just get efficient enough, I can do everything. Then it's like, there's always a chance. You're always like, you keep hope alive for that thing on your list that maybe shouldn't be there at all, like you said, Chris.
Lots of tactics to focus on things. What's required for this focus is energy. Let's talk about some ways that we can recharge ourselves.
As much as it's about time and like dividing things up, it's really about energy. It's about having the energy to do the thing and dive into it and get into that zone that you described, Chris, where you're just like, in an hour, I can do what normally might have taken me weeks to do because I was so locked in. So much of that is actually about physical energy. The brain is a part of the body. And so whatever the tactics are, they're getting very conscious about that is related to the work that you do, or the time that you spend with your loved ones, or the time that you spend doing this hobby or activity that you really care about. The way you sleep, the way you eat, the way you caffeinate or don't, when you walk and take a break and reset your brain, all these things have a powerful effect on what you can actually do with your mind.
Some of them we've done full deep dives on, but what are some of the highlights of tactics around energy that people might not already know?
We had the opportunity when we were at GV to work with Blue Bottle Coffee, and there were, as you might expect, some real coffee nerds at Blue Bottle, and there was this one guy in particular, Ryan Brown, that we worked with, who had done a bunch of research himself on caffeine and how the body actually processes caffeine. And maybe people listening know this already, but caffeine doesn't give you energy. It basically prevents you from getting tired. So there's like a hormone that sort of like binds with the receptor in your brain and tells you it's time to be tired, and caffeine blocks that binding. And the thing that Jake actually turned me on to that I've recently started doing is not having coffee first thing in the morning. So when you have coffee first thing in the morning, your body learns that it needs that in order to wake up. And so it sort of like blunts the effectiveness of it. Coffee, you become more addicted to it, and the caffeine is less effective. But if you can wait an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours to have your first cup of coffee, you'll wake up better. You'll actually have a better kind of energy first thing in the morning. And then if you want that additional boost from caffeine, if you want to experience that sort of quote unquote energy giving effect of caffeine, you have it, a few hours after you've been awake. It's way, way more effective. And so that's one that I think it's not obvious. And it certainly the default of how most people consume caffeine first thing in the morning is different. But that was an interesting thing that we learned about that took me a long time to really implement in my own life, but I like it a lot.
That has had a huge effect on my days. And it's always important to say with caffeine that it affects people differently. And there's this huge population. Like, I have friends who are Swedish who can drink coffee. Like, they just start the day, they're drinking just black coffee, like water all day long, right up till they go to bed, no problem. For me, it's not like that at all. And I have to be mindful of it and spacing out and really picking those spots. I think of it like if you're playing Super Mario Kart and you've got like the mushroom, like the turbo boost, and you want to pick like the right moment, like the straightaway to get that boost. If I burn up my mushroom, and the turns in the beginning, that's like the first one out of the, it's like, it's a waste. It's a waste. So the caffeine timing for most of us, I think is a really big deal and really worth experimenting on for your highlights.
Yeah, my caffeine optimization is quite different because I don't really drink caffeine and I don't drink coffee. But one time, so I never really liked the taste of coffee. And One time I went to Starbucks, I was like, I don't know what to order. And so someone was like, you should get a nitro cold brew. And I was like, I don't know what that is. So ordered it. And best I can understand, a very large nitro cold brew is like drinking 2 or 3 coffees, right? It's way more than you need. And it put me in this like I felt like I had taken a drug, and I actually felt like I could focus, but I've saved that. And it's like a 1 or 2 time a year thing. I'm like, wow, like I can't find the focus. Let's use it as almost like as a drug, not as a thing every day. I'm not sure if I want to recommend that, but that is my experience.
Another tactic that might be a little new to people is called leave your headphones at home. AirPods have they created this incredible default sort of this at the intersection of kind of culture, what's culturally acceptable, socially acceptable, and technology. It's so easy. They're so light. They're so delightful to use that you leave the house, you're going for a walk, you're going to the store, you put your AirPods in, which is great. It's wonderful. I do it all the time. But there's kind of this surprising and novel kind of clarity and calm that comes if you just leave the headphones at home. You're going for a walk, you're going to run errands, and you just don't have your headphones. I mean, it sounds so obvious, like that it even has to be a tactic, but we have found that when the default is to always be listening to something, to always be consuming, to say, oh, well, I can't have downtime. I need to make good use of that time by learning something, whatever. If you can, sort of change that default and use that instead as an opportunity to recharge and to re-energize, it can be helpful.
Where do breaks and exercise and all that fit into our ability to focus?
Well, they're really important. We can't be on all the time. And this is something that John and I noticed when we have run design sprints. In the earliest days of doing it, we didn't have a schedule yet. We didn't yet know sort of what the structure of the day should be, how long we should go. And our tendency was, so the notion with a design sprint is we're working with a team who's starting a big project. We want to help them go from sort of zero to a prototype that we're testing with customers by the end of the week. So you've got a team of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, something like that from, for us, it's a startup usually, but people have adopted this in all kinds of places. And we have a lot to accomplish in a week to get there, to get from zero on this project to a prototype that's realistic that you can test with people. There's a lot to accomplish. At first, our instinct was, well, we need to work the longest days and cram in the most time. So quick breaks, long hours. Over time, we learned we actually get more done if we work in these sort of focus blocks of 60 to 90 minutes. And we have long breaks in between those blocks. So up to like 30 minutes where people can walk, have a snack, really kind of do some of that reset that we were just talking about without the headphones, and then come back and do another session. And so this notion that you have like 60 to 90 minutes for a highlight, it kind of comes, it's informed by that observation that we saw teams reach their peak performance when they were working in those blocks, taking a big break, doing another block, taking a big break.
And so that would make a case for kind of stepping away from your desk, like going on a walk in the middle of the day, kind of just breaking up the day. What about kind of more exercise? I feel like something that I'm sure is not unique to me is like, oh, I really want to work out, but I just got so much stuff to do. So maybe if I can like just catch up, and it seems like the overwhelming theme is like, you'll never catch up. So stop trying to catch up. But how do you guys think about exercise in your own lives?
A couple of ways. I think I share your sentiment, Chris, which is that exercise is something that I really want to do. It's very important to me, but if I don't have kind of a structure around it, it often slips to the end of the day, or it doesn't happen. So, in the book, we actually recommended kind of finding a way to exercise on your own, not depending on a trainer or a gym or some external setting in order to exercise, but rather to find a way to exercise on your own. And I've actually changed my tune on that, not because it's ineffective, but because I found that more often than not, I just wasn't getting to it. It wasn't as important, or didn't seem as urgent to me as other things. And so I've started working with a trainer for a few reasons, partially because they're very good at what they do, and they help me with some specific challenges that I have, but also because now it's scheduled, right? It's I am accountable to that person, and that person has a full schedule of their own. And so if I cancel with them, it's not like I can just reschedule anytime I want. And so I know that it's important to keep that that commitment. So that's something that I've done to help me make sure that I am making time to exercise. But I think there's another view of it for us, which is that exercise is not just something that like you should do or that you need to do to stay healthy, but that it's actually like a tool you can use to build energy. And I'm sure that anybody in your audience has experienced the feeling of being stuck and taking a break or going to take a walk to clear their head, or just sort of this sense that when you start moving and you get away from the desk, like it just kind of gives you a new kind of energy, a new sort of a boost. And so that's kind of another view of it is you can use exercise to actively give you energy to make it easier to then come back refreshed and really focus on the things that you want to make time for.
Yeah, one thing that just made me realize when I go on a run, I sometimes have all kinds of ideas. I know every time I'm running, I'm like, gosh, I wish I could just write these ideas down. So sometimes I'll pull out the notes app and I'm like trying to write down an idea just so I don't miss it. Yeah. Another time I was like, should I just bring a Sharpie and start writing on my arm? Or it's always dawned on me that is probably because I'm not distracted, right? Like I'm running, I'm not sitting there scrolling social media. I can't do that. I'm running. So I just have to be with my thoughts. And when I'm with my thoughts, sometimes I come up with really interesting things. It's never dawned on me that you could just create that. It's like, well, what if I just stopped using the social media ads? It sounds so obvious, but I was like, I just love that experience. And in my mind, I was like, I should just run more, there's another way to get to that state.
Yeah.
I think that we would all be better off if we can exercise in some way every day. And the exercise, it can be a walk. It doesn't have to be a Herculean feat. And in fact, for myself, I've found it's better if I don't do those Herculean exercise things. That's going to usually be a recipe for me, like hurting myself and then stopping the program or wearing myself out too much and not being able to focus. But a regular, whatever you can do that you can fit in. And I think for most people, you'll benefit from it more in the morning. Then I benefit from that time that you just described, Chris, like that brain time. And that the sort of cognitive boost that I get afterwards, I get to enjoy that all day long. It's really powerful. And it's, there are obviously many reasons to exercise for our health and longevity and so forth. But just if you think about it as an equation for what can help you focus, what can help you do your work the best or bring the best attention to the people and the projects you care about, it's a great way to get more out of each day.
All right, there are a lot of tactics. I'm like, there's no way we're getting through all of them. So I'm going to move us on to some reflecting and how you guys think about that process. We talked briefly about it, but maybe tactically, what do we do to reflect?
I think at the most basic, reflecting is just asking yourself, like, how did the day go? Like, how did I feel today? What did I spend time on? Was that what I wanted to spend time on? And in the back of the book in Make Time, we have a template for that. It's on our website too. So it's free. You don't have to buy the book to get it, but it's a simple template that you can use if it's helpful to just sort of walk you through each of those questions. But I think that the more important aspect of reflecting is to then think about what you're going to do differently tomorrow. Because, if you get in this habit of treating each day as an experiment, you can sort of look back and say, okay, how did it go? Did I make time for the things that I wanted to? And then if not, well, what am I going to do differently tomorrow? And, you can use the tactics in the book, or you can, get inspired by other things that come to mind or that you read about or you hear about. But being somewhat deliberate about what you're going to do next is kind of that's the secret to propelling this daily experiment cycle. And over time, then getting to a point where you're not just like reading a book and following some advice from us, but you're actually like constructing your own system. You're making your own personalized system that's based on results from your own life, based on the things that have actually worked for you and that you are confident work for you, that you enjoy doing. And so that's kind of both the mechanics of Reflect, but also the bigger philosophy of why we think it's important.
You can honestly you can think about it as like you're playing Super Mario Brothers, and it's like every day you're at the end of a level, and I mean, you either died or you're at the end you got through the level, and like maybe you didn't get through the level, but you went into a warp zone or something, and like, you changed your highlight, you went in a different direction. But if you didn't make it through, if you look back and you're like, that did not go the way I wanted to, if you think of it as like, oh, I didn't measure up, I suck, like, you're not going to be having a good time. But hopefully people don't feel that way when they're playing Super Mario Brothers. You're like, man, that Goomba got me, or like whatever, like the Koopa Troop, I ran right into him. I got to do, next time I'm going to just jump a little bit sooner. I'm going to jump a little bit higher, whatever. And that's the way I think you can think about it. It's just like, oh, we tried one thing. Did it work or not? And if it didn't work, what might I correct about it? Because there's all these bad guys who are against me. And I feel like in the world of all of the distractions and all of the social expectations and all of the things that we pile on ourselves and expect ourselves to do, those are all bad guys that we have to avoid. And if we trip up for a day and if the bad guys get us, it's not necessarily this intrinsic problem with us. We're all going to have days like that. I have them all the time. It's just, okay, the old system wasn't working for me. I need to adapt. Things are new. Or, I'm trying to set up this new thing and it's not clicking yet. What am I going to change tomorrow? And it can be as simple as that.
Sounds like even though you guys wrote the book and practice this daily, you still have days where you don't get stuff done that you want to.
Oh my God, constantly. Yeah. Constantly. It's a constant battle for me. And I'm constantly getting distracted by stuff. You'd be like, really? You wrote a book on this and you're getting distracted? Look at what you're doing right now. Like all the time. It's just like, I'm the worst. I'm the absolute worst. And so this is just like how do you take someone who's really easily distractible and very poor self-control and like get anything done? And like, that's make time is that for me.
Where would you send people? And if that's different types of people to follow up on everything you're doing from character to make time to anything else?
I think it depends on what you're looking for. If you are specifically interested in getting started with some of these tactics, go to maketime.blog, which is our website. And there's a bunch of easy ways to start. There's a bunch of free resources. You can go as deep or stay as shallow as you want. We've talked a bunch about the work that we do with founders. We invest in startups. We love working with founders when they're at the earliest stages of building their companies. And we do that through our VC firm, Character. And so our website is character.vc. And one thing that's really exciting in the Character world is that twice a year we run a program called Character Labs. It's basically kind of our version of a startup accelerator where we apply a lot of these lessons. We apply lessons from the hundreds of design sprints that we've run with companies. And we sort of tailored this program to help people who are just getting started building something new. And so if you're at that stage, if you're in those early days, you should also check out Character Labs. And it's a cool opportunity to work with us as you're starting a new business.
Yeah, as someone who has worked with you with portfolio companies and my own, I can fully endorse and recommend anyone go do that, right? If it's one of those 2 times a year, go wait for the next one. Going through that design sprint process, yes, you can read the book and try to do it yourself, but going through it with someone who's done it is just one of the most interesting experiences you can have when you're building a company.
Thank you for saying that. And it's also what's fun for us. And I think where we can have a big impact for founders is not just in like leading them through the process, because like you said, they can read the book, they can do it, but we get to contribute ideas then, right? Like if we were a normal investor and like, we talk to a founder once a month or we're on the board or whatever, we throw out an idea like, hey, did you consider this? What if you did it that way? It's hard to really have an impact in that way. But when we're running a sprint with the founders of a startup, with the core team of that startup, it creates an opportunity for us to bring our experience as designers and writers and contribute those ideas directly. So we're literally making sketches, we're writing copy, we're working on mock-ups and prototypes for those founders. So that's, I think, one of the things that's really unique about working in this way with founders.
Yeah. I don't have a startup right now, or I'd be knocking on the door. But
You do. This is a kind of a startup, Chris. I mean, come on.
I don't have a vent. I'm not raising money. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah,
Thanks for having us,
I'm
Chris.
such a big fan of all the hacks. And so this is really a treat to get to be on the show.